If you're looking for a watch to track and record your runs and you're looking at the Apple Watch, then this video is for you. This video is going to talk mainly about the Apple Watch SE, but I will make sure to also mention the Apple Watch Ultra and the Series 10 where suitable. So I've had the Apple Watch SE for a year and a half now, and I initially chose it because I'm in the Apple ecosystem. I have a Mac, I have an iPhone, and I thought using an Apple Watch was going to be the easiest thing for me. I would say the Apple Watch has a very intuitive user interface. If you are familiar with an iPhone, an iPad, a MacBook, then using an Apple Watch is going to be really easy. For example, if you use the Apple Watch to record your workout, it will automatically sync to your other Apple devices right afterwards. But as I said, I think there are pros and cons to the Apple Watch, especially for runners. So let's dive into the pros, then I will discuss some of the cons, and in the end I will give you a conclusion. So first up, I have to mention that the Apple Watch is very comfortable to wear. You can easily swap out the bands, change them to something else, and especially the Apple Watch SE is pretty small even on a wrist like mine, which is a small female wrist. One of the great things about the Apple Watch is the integration with third-party apps, and this is kind of what me got initially sold on it, besides me being in the Apple ecosystem. I started running again about a year and a half ago when I got this watch, and I was advised to use the Nike Run Club app, and the Nike Run Club works really well with the Apple Watch. On top of that, it also has really good integrations with apps like Strava and Runna. Besides that, a lot of companies and app developers may choose to develop first for the Apple Watch before they develop for other types of sport watches. For example, on the Apple Watch, I can listen to Audible. I can also listen to Libro FM, however you pronounce it. It is my audiobook app and it works seamlessly with an Apple Watch, but is not available on any other watch. So those are all pros of having this tiny little computer on your wrist, but what about the cons? Well, unfortunately, I have to say there are quite a few. First up, I would say that the amount of data that you get from an Apple Watch is not as elaborate as the data that you, for example, get from Garmin or Coros. I have a lot of friends who run with either a Coros watch, a Garmin watch, some even Suunto or Polar, and the amount of data that they get from their runs is substantially more than what I can find in my fitness and health app after I complete a run with an Apple Watch. Meaning, if you are really into data, I don't think the Apple Watch is the right choice for you. And then easily the biggest drawback of all is the battery life on the Apple Watch. And this goes for both the Apple Watch SE as well as the Apple Watch Series 10 or the Apple Watch Ultra. I looked at all three and I researched them so much. I was on the verge of buying an Apple Watch Ultra for the longer battery life. But truth is, the battery life on the Ultra is still way less than it is on many other watches. Let's take a quick look. Okay, so here we are on the website of Apple. We have the Apple Watch SE, Series 10 and Ultra 2. And if we scroll down, we can see a bit of a comparison here. So besides the thing that I already mentioned about size, the SE being the smallest, I have the 40 millimeters case, but the other ones are already bigger, and the Ultra just has one size option, which for me was way too big. But besides that, there's the battery life. The SE says up to 18 hours, then the Series 10 says up to 18 hours or 36 hours in low power mode, and then the Ultra says up to 36 hours or 72 hours in low power mode. Now the problem is, when you go run with an Apple Watch, you are using up a lot of its energy, of its power, because you're probably going to be using GPS, and GPS just seems to absolutely drain the battery. I can already hear some Apple fans get angry at me here, but I've been using this watch for a year and a half, and even in low power mode, I can barely get through the day, especially if I go out for a longer run. And if I want to listen to music while I'm running, then that battery is going to be pretty much drained even after a 10 to 15k run. So like, what's that, like 8 miles. Now if I then wanted to track my sleep with this little watch, I would be pretty much screwed, because at the end of the day, the battery on my Apple Watch SE is pretty much drained. And this one does not have fast charging. For that, I would need to upgrade to a Series 10 or an Apple Watch Ultra. And then technically you could charge your watch while maybe you're having a shower and brushing your teeth. but the idea of always having to charge it is still pretty annoying. You might just forget and go to bed and be like, oh no, I wanted to track my sleep, and then you need to stay up longer to charge your watch. And technically, looking at the amount of hours you get on the Apple Watch Ultra, there maybe you would be fine. But now imagine you are on a trip, you are doing a weekend away. It's not like you cannot take your charger. You really have to bring it, especially if you are planning to go out on a few runs as well. And I am talking about the Apple Watch for running here, so I'm assuming that on a weekend trip away you are lacing up your shoes. And I know I already said that the battery drains quickly, but as somebody that is running longer and longer on a more regular basis, I am actually really struggling to use this watch on long runs. I remember a day where I did a 35k with this watch, and at the end of it I had 5% left. And I did not even listen to music on that run. If you plan to run longer distances, if you are training for a marathon or an ultra marathon, or something else that's kind of crazy, then I would not recommend getting an Apple Watch, especially for the price point that it is at. As you can see right here, the Apple Watch SE currently goes for $250, the Series 10 for $400, and the Watch Ultra 2 goes for almost $800. That's a lot of money, but if you are looking for an entry point watch, then the Apple Watch SE is pretty okay priced. But let's take a quick look at what you could get from competitor brands for the same price point. Let's start with Coros. So on the website of Coros, we can see that we can get the Coros Space 3 for $229, which is cheaper than the Apple Watch SE. Now the Coros Space 3 may have a little bit less functionality than the Apple Watch SE, but if we are looking to get a watch for running, it is an interesting watch. And I'm saying that because of two different reasons. First up, for me, is the battery life. You can see here that on standard full GPS, we would get 38 hours out of the Coros Space 3 and 10 hours if we were also playing music. All systems on, I'm not quite sure what that means, so I'm going to skip that. Dual frequency is a stronger type of GPS. We would still get 15 hours or 7 hours with offline music playing. And if we were to just use the watch, so we just go about our day and so forth, we should be able to get up to 15 days out of it. On top of that, Coros is really good at showing you your data. I really miss this with the Apple Watch and the iPhone app that comes along with it. Looking at my data, I find it just hard to read how well my training went and where I'm at and how my body is doing. Whereas Coros has its so-called Evo Lab, and I've seen this before shown by other runners, and it looks super neat. I'm not affiliated or sponsored by Coros in any way, but go check it out for yourself and you'll see what I mean. Now let's also take a look at Garmin. So for the same price point of $250, we could get either the Forerunner 55, an even cheaper price point, or the Forerunner 165 at $250. So I would say this is the most comparable because of its price point. So let's have a look at what we would get out of this. Now there are a few things that immediately grab my attention here. First up is the 11 days of battery life in smartwatch mode, which is not entirely relevant to us runners because smartwatch mode essentially means that you are not actively tracking any workouts, and you are, but still. And then also the music on your wrist. With this specific watch, you can download Spotify playlists and get them onto your watch, which makes it a little bit more similar to the Apple Watch. Besides that, Garmin always gives you a lot of data. So if you are looking for data, a Garmin watch is pretty much always a solid idea. And on top of that, you get a whole bunch of other features, which they've all beautifully outlined right here. So over here we can see the battery life of this specific watch. And I think one of the more interesting ones to look at here is the GPS only GNSS mode with music, up to 7 hours. So that's pretty comparable to the Coros Space 3. And it's more than you would get out of an Apple Watch without a doubt. Or actually what I should say, it's more than you're going to get out of the Apple Watch SE. Because I don't have an Apple Watch Ultra, so I cannot completely compare that. So now that I've shown you the pros and cons of the Apple Watch SE, and I've also shown you some alternatives, you may wonder, so what do I do? And I think the answer lies in how long do you usually run and what kind of apps or features do you want from your watch. If you are mainly looking for a running watch and you like to run slightly longer distances, then I would absolutely go for one of the competitors. But if you like to run shorter distances and you also want to listen to audiobooks and podcasts and music, and you want your watch to be able to do a whole bunch of things, then do consider an Apple Watch. That is if you don't mind the ridiculously short battery life. I hope this video was helpful to you. If you liked it, then please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and sign up for Run Letters, my free weekly newsletter. You can find a link to that in the first line in the description, and I hope to see you in the next one.